kind of a messy version of it. Anyways, how you doing? My name's Elton. This is Elton's 15, and welcome to my channel. I'm highlighting what is Chapter 7 in Alex Van Halen's book called Brothers, written about his brother Eddie Van Halen. And I'm playing a guitar that's called a Gibson Explorer, of which a version of this, an Ibanez Destroyer, was used on the first Van Halen album. And I do believe it was used on You Really Got Me, so there's the tie-in right here. And yes, Indy, I brought the guitar out of your room, and I'm playing it to get all the dust off of it. You haven't been home for a little bit. Anyway, so that's a side note. My son's away at college, and this is his guitar. It's been hanging out in his room, waiting for him to come home and play it. And I guess you guys will be reunited for the Thanksgiving break. But anyways, I can't really put this guitar down on the guitar stand because it's such a strange shape. So I didn't think of that before I made the video. And the guitar stand that I have looks like this. It'll just fall over, and I don't want that happening because like the neck will snap or something. And I just broke, I have a Les Paul and the headstock snapped off. That's another story. But anyway, so back to why you're here. So Chapter 7. It starts off with the idea of song creation, right? Songs and where they come from and how they're sort of materialized. And so it's the art of finding and chasing songs, right? You know, the idea of a song being something that's already in you, or are you tapping into some sort of divine, like, I don't know, atmospheric, interstellar sort of, I don't know, source, and then boom, there it is. So Alex goes on to talk about that process, and I'm going to read another passage from the book, as I did with Chapter 6 here, because he puts it interestingly enough, and he gives credit to a guy by the name of Jerry Saltz, who posted this up on social media at some point, and it's pretty good. Well, it's very good, so that's why I'm reading it. So it goes, "Artist, your work hides from you until you find it. The beauty is it loves being found as much as you love finding it. You have touched the tail of the dragon. You're never going to get your arms around the whole thing. You'll probably spend your entire life wondering if dragons exist, even if you've touched one." Yeah, so the process of song development and song creation. On a very low level, I create my own songs, and I minimally sort of understand the passage on an artistic level. It's true, you know, when you're putting pieces together of music and formulating songs, my goodness, it's quite an adventure. It's a lot of fun. It's pretty awesome. So that's pretty interesting to sort of liken it to a dragon, right? Being able to touch it and not getting your arms around it, you know. Pretty poignant. Anyways, so Alex points out that music is something that can be solitary, stuff that you put together by yourself. It could be stuff you do with your family, brothers and sisters. It could be done with friends, etc. Then the chapter just jumps into 1977 being Van Halen's year. And it was a big year. And he highlights the following. He highlights that Van Halen was able to open up for Carlos Santana at Long Beach Arena. He highlights that they were opening up for Niles Lofgren at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. And the LA Times actually wrote up a piece on Van Halen, calling them the slickest, commercially most promising band that's up and coming. So that's pretty cool to have all those sort of lined up in that year. But more importantly, is that they got to actually play the whiskey. I just dropped my pick there, kind of fiddling with my hands. I do this a lot, so I'm trying to keep them off screen here. Just a little inside scoop here. Yeah, they got to play the whiskey, and the guy that booked the whiskey shows at that time was a guy by the name of Marshall Burrell, who consequently goes on to be Van Halen's first manager, but only for the beginning of the first album recording and the first tour, and then after Not so much anymore. That was taken up by a different guy that we'll talk about in a little bit. But Marshall Burl is the one that guts Ted Templeman, who looms very large, there goes my hands again, in Van Halen history. He is noted for a variety of things. He's recorded, the Doobie Brothers up to this point, Nicolette Larson. A little bit later on, he was recording Aerosmith. He also recorded, Eric Clapton, Behind the Sun, sometime in the 1980s. But anyways, the guy had a stellar reputation at Warner Brothers as a producer. And so Ted goes down and he loves the band, falls in love with Eddie Van Halen. I mean, he likens Eddie Van Halen to some really phenomenal jazz greats. Now, I'm not much of a jazz aficionado. I know big names because the big names are those names that are always mentioned continually. And so some of those big names include, Miles Davis, of which Templeman has seen all of them. And he, like I said, he likens Ed's talent to these guys. So Miles Davis, big guy for sure. Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker. I mean, pretty good company, and that's where he places Ed, right within that rarefied Ed in that rarefied air. Anyways, Al mentions. I guess there's some sort of tension between Al and Ted Templeman that dates back to being the early days of Van Halen. Very grateful to him, but also not so happy with him with production stuff, and then because of credits, Van Halen being able to capitalize off their recordings and things called points, where if you're awarded a point, you're forever paid upon that music, whether it's albums or songs. And Templeman having a pretty big portion of it, and he, I guess Al has taken real exception to that quite a bit. And Ed had mentioned it in the last decade or so when he was giving interviews regarding that. But anyways, Templeman comes down, loves the band, and invites the CEO of Warner Brothers Records, because that's who they end up signing with, to come down. And Mo Austin falls in love with Van Halen also, thinks they're absolutely great. This puts, as Al says, the Van Halen camp, Michael Anthony, David Lee Roth, Eddie Van Halen, and Alex Van Halen, in a state of euphoria. Their heads were swimming in this new reality. My goodness, we're getting signed to like the best label with the best guys. Ted Templeman, again, came with a certain pedigree. Mo Austin was responsible for he'd done stuff with Frank Sinatra, signed Jimi Hendrix, a few other big names I'm trying to think of. But anyways, I mean, the Kinks, that kind of stuff. But they couldn't believe that it was finally happening. Like, this is actually happening. They're building a momentum here, and this is all happening in 1977. And Al recounts a story where they're going to sign the actual record contract, and they're driving in Dave's car. It's called a Valiant. And halfway there, the car breaks down. Now, they have to be at the meeting to sign the contract. And I would imagine they're all dressed up in their rock star gear, because Alex goes on to mention, I'm just going to put this guitar on the ground. Sorry, Indy, I'm putting the guitar down on the ground here. Kind of making me lean forward a lot. So Al mentions the car breaks down, and they run. He says 5 miles. That's a long way, but I'll go with what the book says. They run 5 miles to get the record contract signed, and they have like platform shoes, which was sort of the cool style of the day. And when they arrive, they're out of breath, they're all peaked, they're just sweating and just red. And it is their future manager, Noel Monk, who replaces Marshall Burl, who's there. Noel Monk kind of has a little bit of a history with the Sex Pistols. I guess he'd managed their tour, their tour back in 1977. And Al says that kind of shows you what the label thought of Van Halen at the time, because punk music was that emerging music scene at that time. And so they must have seen Van Halen as that, right? A punk band. But anyways, he's there to see them come in, and he says it looks like they all ran a race that they lost, which is a pretty funny thing. But anyways, they signed the contract, and Al says them running that 5 miles kind of symbolized something. I guess this is in retrospect, that it was a commitment to the band, that just running to be there on time. It was a commitment to the label, and he sort of reckons it in that way. Now, he also said that this was an opportunity now for people outside of Southern California to now recognize the greatness of Van Halen and know the Van Halen name. So all this is just building momentum, right? Playing the whiskey, headlining there, getting seen by the major record guys at the time, signing the record contract, and they're off to the races. It's really happening for them. He also says, Al does, that they signed a terrible contract. It's called a Motown deal. Now, I guess a Motown deal is synonymous with really getting the shaft in terms of what is a contract. And he doesn't go into detail in the book about what the contract was. But several years ago, there was an interview. You can find it on YouTube, where it's Eddie Van Halen, Alex, and David Lee Roth, probably during the 2012-ish, timeline. It's done in black and white, and they're all sitting around and just having open discussions about a variety of things. I love those interviews. They're done fantastically well, because it's just the band talking amongst themselves. And they go into detail about the Motown deal. I probably should have rewatched it so I could recount it for you, but go check it out. It's worth seeing what the Motown deal was. Anyways, he says that it's a terrible deal, but looking back, he wouldn't do anything differently. It is what it was, and it was just all part of just being in that mix of just having all this momentum and signing the bad deal. And so, okay, the bad deal is the bad deal. So chapter 7 is kind of quick, and I'm going to pull the book back over here again and just kind of read out one last thing here. Again, it's pretty poignant. Page 97 here, and at the top it reads, and I guess it's part of them getting sort of screwed, because when Mo Austin showed up to see the band, he was wondering if they had a manager, and they didn't have a manager, and so they made Marshall Burl the manager pretty much on the spot. But anyways, it says, and I guess it's a clip out of Ted Templeman's book, because he wrote a book about Van Halen too, and I read it. I liked it. Al has a lot of issues with it. He doesn't go into major detail about it, but he does quote from various sources, including that. And I guess this is a quote from Ted Templeman's book that is in Alex Van Halen's book. So it goes, Ted remembers, during our backstage visit, Mo pulled Marshall Burl and me aside. Mo said to Marshall, "Do they have a manager?" "No, I'm just kind of looking after them." "Well, they do now. You're their manager." Right there and then, we made the deal. I was ecstatic. "I'll bet you were." Now, this is Ted's voice, I guess. And "I bet you were" was Al kind of interjecting in parentheses here. "I bet you were, Ted. You can't do better than negotiating against someone who owes you their job." So, the fact that things were just kind of on the spot, there they are. They don't know any better. We can take advantage of their naivety. And, the guys that are in control benefit, and the band that's very hungry ends up kind of on the short end of the stick. But as Al says, he did not, he wouldn't redo things. He would keep it as is. So I guess all in all, it all kind of washes out. And so that's pretty much how chapter 7 finishes. So yeah, thank you very much for making it this far. If you did, my name's Elton. This is Elton's 15. Thanks again.